Prova, prova. Cinque minuti e ci siamo. Grazie mille. Buonasera a tutti, grazie mille per essere qua al panel 2, panel finale del giorno 2 del 2024 Italian Symposium. Sorry, I forgot it's in English. We're really honored to have you, all of you here, and to be here with us with a really special guest, Enrico Letta. I want to thank the Italian Society, the LSE Italian Society, the Oxford Italian Society for helping us. You can see them running around. They're all volunteers. They're all great people. They all work really hard for making this event happen. So I'm really grateful. I would like to thank also United Italian Societies for hosting the 2024 Italian Symposium. And finally, the sponsors for supporting the making of this event. I'm introducing the moderators today. I don't think our speaker needs any introduction, but I will let them introduce Mr. Letta. And the event is moderated by Guglielmo Santamaria and Nicolò Babbini. Thank you very much for everything and enjoy.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming to day 2 of the Italian Symposium. I think it's an honor to have Prime Minister Letta here with us today. Thank you really to everyone who's here today and to everyone who's been supporting the symposium, because I think that like United Italian Societies is really you guys, and so without you, this wouldn't be a thing, and without anyone here, this would really mean nothing. And so thank you to everyone who came here. Really, we really appreciate it. Without further ado, I think that I'll get straight into the panel. I'll introduce you, even though you definitely do not need an introduction. Your CV is too prestigious not to mention any of it. Enrico Letta, he's been Prime Minister of Italy in between 2013 and 2014. He's been secretary of the Partito Democratico. In Italy, he's created Scuola di Politiche. He's now president of the Jacques Delors Institute. He's been dean at the Paris School of International Affairs for many years, and he's covered throughout his life and his career several ministerial positions as well. But I want to start from your latest career position, let's say, because a few months ago, the EU Council commissioned you under the Belgian presidency to draft a report on the future of the EU single market. And so I want to ask you, especially kind of after having been back to Italy for a bit of politics for a while, how is this new experience? Why did you accept the role? Why do you find it so important also? Because I feel that, especially in Italy also, but in many European countries, EU member states citizens feel that European issues are kind of European and tend to cultivate and look only at their own backyard without really realizing that their own backyard is well situated within the EU backyard. So how are you finding it, and why is it so important?
First of all, thank you all for this opportunity. It's for me great. It's for me great also to exchange and to try to test some ideas that I will try to put in the report. The report is something that is, in my view, very important in this very moment for a very simple reason. The European Union and the single market was, you know very well, was established in 85, 92, so it was a very different period from now. And the need today to think and to rethink the single market and the European Union is absolutely crucial for many reasons. First reason, when we established the single market, the UK was on board. And it is not a detail. But for a very simple reason, the UK was on board and the UK was the main drive of the single market. Maybe we don't know, but the single market was established with an agreement between Jacques Delors, the founder of the single market, and Margaret Thatcher. And the UK role to boost the European single market was really, really very important. And I have to say that running this exercise today, I feel the fact that we are missing the UK. I want to say it very clearly and very frankly. I'm among those who are very much sad because of Brexit, but I think it was a disaster for them. But I think it is negative for us too, because we miss them, we are missing them, and because even for the single market, it's a problem not to have them on board. But I have to add that the main change is not only the UK out and the UK was in, but also the rest of the geopolitical changes around us. China wasn't there, India wasn't there, the BRICS didn't exist. Africa was totally different. Today, around us, we have many, many giants. And today, one of the most important phrases that I consider for the European Union, very, very meaningful, today is more meaningful than yesterday. And this phrase was a phrase of Jean Monnet, the founder of the European Union, the European community at that time. Once he said, the member states, the European member states, are divided in two groups. One group, the small countries. Second group, the countries they didn't understand yet they are small. And I think it is really true. It is today's reality. We are all 27 countries, all small countries in the world of today. We weren't small countries. I want to stress your point because you are young, you don't have the experience of that period. But when the European Union was founded, when the G7 was founded, the G7 was funded with the criteria, the priority was the 7 biggest economies in the world. And 4 out of 7 were European countries. If we have to reorganize the G7 in 10 years' time, with the same criteria, just Germany alone will be in. So not 4 out of 7, 1 and probably in zona retrocessione. Should be. That is the key point. So, and the key point is related also to demography. I just want to give you one, for me, very important data. You know very well, because you are very bright students, you know very well that demography is fundamental to understand what is happening and to understand also economy. If you take the most important data on demography, you feel that our generations are living the most extraordinary period in the entire history. If you take, for instance, the life of someone like me, I was born in the mid of the 60s. When I was born, we Europeans, we were 20% of the world population. 20%. of a world population that was 3 billion. The African, the people in Africa was at that time, when we were 20%, they were 7%. 7% of the 3 billions. In the next 20 years, so in 2050, when my generation probably will leave this planet, we, the Europeans, we will be 7% of the world. The Africans, they will be 20% of the world. And the total amount of people will move from 3 billions to 10 billions. So what I want to tell you is that we were the center of the world, and we are no more the center of the world. And alone, each European country will be totally marginalized. This is why Brexit is a disaster, because they voted con lo specchietto retrovisore. And that, I think that was the main problem. The future is a future where the European values, the European idea can be really influential in the world of tomorrow only if we are together. There will be a place at the table where the main decisions will be taken, and even security today is one of the most important topics. So my report will start from this consideration. When the single market was founded, the European countries were alone, main countries, big countries. Today, we have to be all together to be influential. That means that we have to integrate. I will use some of the most important figures to try to convince people. I can spoiler here. One of the data I will use, for instance, is the data related to telecom. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with these topics, and maybe you're studying competition in the telecom markets. But if you take one of the problems of the single market is the fragmentation on telecom. Because when Jacques Delors started and told the European leaders, we have to put everything together, the European leaders told him, yes, but. And the yes, but started not telecom. Why not telecom? Because they told Jacques Delors, because telecom is a national strategic dimension. Telecom is based on our language and so on and so forth. The result of this decision is that today we have a market of 27 countries, 27 markets, and not one single market. And in each market, you have 3, 4, 5 operators. That means that in Europe, we have more than 100 telecom operators. What is the consequence? The consequence is that the average number of clients of a Chinese operator is 460 million clients. The average number of an American operator is 110 million clients. The average number of a European operator, I know you won't believe it, but it's 5 million clients, each operator. That means that the dimension that is so crucial and so important for innovation, for being able to, on these topics, to drive, is no more in the hands of the Europeans. The telecom market is a great example. You weren't there, but in the 90s, the telecom revolution was a European revolution. GSM, that was the first big mobile revolution, was a European technology. We had many brands European based. And today we know very well what is happening. You can choose between South Korean, American. We are trying to preserve and to protect Ericsson and Nokia. They are the only 2 brands, big global brands that are European. So I strongly believe that can give you, I stop here, I can give you many other examples, but this is what I'm trying to do. trying to use tools, arguments to convince the European leaders that we have to integrate and to leave each country with this simulacrum of power, having each country his own telecom market, his own energy market, his own financial market, means having very small dimension and not being able to compete at world level with America, with China, with India. They are united. We are not united. In your studies, you have always the data at world level, and you see America, United States, Europe, China, India, but in reality, they are united because they are single markets. We are not in many topics. So my report is to try to push the leaders and to say, it's urgent. We can't lose other time before joining and being all together. And we pay the price because of Brexit, but now we have to move and we have to integrate in all the different aspects. Sorry, I was too long in your answer. I promise I will be shorter for the next answers.
Mr. President, you...
No, please, Enrico. Leave it.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. You mentioned the late, great Jacques Delors, architect of the single market, who used Hannah Arendt's words, forgiving and promising, to describe what's needed for cooperation in Europe. How can we interpret this message now in light of the requirements for an ever closer union currently? So to replicate, for instance, through fiscal cooperation, fiscal solidarity, common spending on public good, the success of the IRA, and achieve the goals of the twin transitions, so sustainability and digitalization?
I start from one point. When the single market was created, so starting point was 1st January 93, in the 90s, the word was a word in which we thought, it was a wishful thinking, that rule of law, democracy, Western values were close to dominate the world. And so we decided to open everything with the idea that the world will be dominated by our values. In reality, today, if you give a look around, we have the comeback of the worst values of the 20th century, if I may say. One of them, of course, is the war, is the idea to solve problem of frontiers, of borders, with the tanks, with war, with death. But it is not just that. There's many other aspects. And the problem of rule of law is a problem that is, we know, we feel the smell too within the European Union. Rule of law means independence of justice, independence of media, and we know that even within some European countries, we had many problems in the last period. So my answer to your question is the fact that the European values are what is able to, we say, to give us a reason to love Europe, to give us the reason to be able to stay all together in Europe, and I have to say also to give us the reason to consider that Europe is a unique place in the world, from Helsinki to Coimbra to Thessalonica to Stockholm. We have the same system of values, and this same system of values is unique at world level, and we have to preserve it, and we have to make it more influential in the world. And in today's world, is a big fight, because the rest of the world is a little bit uncertain on that, on some of these issues. And I'm not just talking about Putin, because what I'm really, frankly speaking, I'm really shocked, because I was January the 6th, 2020, I was watching the TV, And I had the idea, it was a movie with, I don't know, Schwarzenegger, and the idea of people assaulting the Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., with the ongoing president encouraging them. And this former president is running to be president again. What will happen in a world in which a Trump too, with the, I would say, the announcement or the program that he launched, that Trump too will be without all the shy attitudes of the Trump one, that is a little bit scaring as program that is launching. So just to tell you, sometimes when we discuss about Europe, we are too much on the details, on the screwdriver, on the bureaucratic choices, on laws, on regulation. Europe is a matter of values. And we are together because we share these values. Because our continent is a continent where you can be in a different country and you feel at home, because the same system of value, of protection of value, human rights is there. And I think we have to preserve this way of life. In the rest of the world, in many parts of the rest of the world, it is under attack, this way of life. And we have to preserve the way to solve in peaceful way our controversies. You know, what is, in a few words, the greatest achievement of Europe is the fact that for, I would say, centuries and centuries, our countries intended their life and the life of millions of people with the idea that I win, you lose. I, Italian, win, you, Austrian, you lose. When you win, I lose. Take France and Germany. For centuries, and just to move a border, and today you pass the border, you don't feel you are passing a border. But in this border, there are millions of young people that died at 18 years old, just to move a border of 10 kilometers, and to move a totally stupid and useless border that today doesn't exist. But millions of generations of young people of your age died because of that. And today we understood in Europe that we can cooperate. And cooperating means that I win, you win, we win together. We are able to win together. So I think this is the great strength of Europe. We have to be proud of it. You will listen in my today, in this conversation, I will mention many failure of the European Union, weaknesses of the European Union, difficulties of the European Union. We have to improve and we have to try to find solutions, but we have to start from this consideration and we have to be proud of all these achievements.
I think you mentioned Russia and Ukraine, and so there's my next question. A few days ago, we had Ursula von der Leyen say some, I would say, worrying words, because she said that the threat of war to Europe is not imminent, but cannot be excluded. And she said that because of this, obviously, we need to act and go towards a common European defense in terms of both weapon procurements and, in general, the defense industry. We had yesterday a great panel that we had. We had Natalie Tocci, director of Istituto Affari Internazionali. She expressed the idea that we are acting too late, or more than acting, Europe is kind of reacting to what happened in between Russia and Ukraine, and we should have done this ages ago. But looking now at the future, we kind of I think we see that now this is a problem and we need to act in terms of the defense industry. But what do you see as the main challenges in between and amongst the enlargement versus kind of deeper integration issue, or external alliances of EU countries, internal mechanisms, funding difficulties? Why do you see if you had to pick one or two, when do you see the main challenges lie there?
Easy question. I think we have to start by saying a very clear mea culpa. And the mea culpa is because we didn't understand anything on Ukraine. I remember the days, 24th of February. We were totally unprepared, everywhere in the Western world, not in the same way. I remember many people, many friends from Poland, from Estonia, from Finland telling us, but it is not like you think. It is a threat. And this threat is there. And it is an existential threat for a very simple reason. Is the way to think with the mindset of the last century. Is the Yalta idea. Is to say the leaders, they sit around the table and they say, this country is mine, this people is yours. And you move, and this is the way in which borders were created in large part of the world, and is inconceivable today. The self-determination of our country. It is not our choice to have the Ukrainians on board and to have the Ukrainians becoming European members. It is their choice. They decided to be, or to try to be, European. And we, of course, we are happy because of that, but we ask everyone to respect this choice. And we ask Putin to respect this choice. We would respect the opposite choice in case of a different decision from their side. This is the first point. So this is why it is an existential threat. And this is why we can't just have fatigue of the word. Our fatigue is a non-issue, if I may say, because these people, they are dying. And they are dying for a value, an existential value. The main problem you mentioned about defense is, in my view, the fact that defense, you know very well that the European community, you know the history, started with the failure of Communauté Européenne de Défense because of the vote of the French Assembly. And this vote of the French Assembly in 1954 changed everything for Europe, because the first idea was to have defense as the main, and then everything started on economy, not on defense. And that was maybe one of the big boosts for the European integration. But today, I told you before, my big surprise is that I have to write a report on the future of the single market. You are familiar of the European matters, and you know that there's a fundamental rule in Europe. And the fundamental rule in European law is that single market is communitarian. Communitarian means that the Commission leads. And the member states, they decide together, but with the Commission leading. And they decide, the member states, with the majority vote. There's no veto right in the single market fields. Then you have other topics. One of the is defense, and defense is a field where it is exactly the opposite. It is not the Commission leading, and you have the veto right and the unanimity vote. I am supposed to write a report on the single market, so no defense. That was my, I would say, a little bit scholastic approach to the topic. Then I decided to run this exercise as a collective exercise. So I decided to visit all the 27 countries, meeting stakeholders in every country. This is why also I'm here, because the UK was part of the single market. I will meet the Prime Minister of Norway, Liechtenstein, Iceland. You know that these three countries are part of the single market, but not part of the European Union. I want to mention Norway because it is interesting. Because Norway is one of the best advertising for the single market. Why? Because Norway, you know very well, Norway is not part of the European Union. But Norway is part of the single market. Maybe you remember in the debate, in the crazy debate on Brexit, someone said to the British, but take the example of Norway. Okay, Brexit, out of the European Union, but stay in the single market. And they decided, and I think that was the biggest mistake, if I may say. But why I mention Norway? I mention Norway for a very simple reason. Norway is part of the single market, not part of the European Union. And to stay in the single market, every year in December, they pay a check to the European budget to be in without taking part to the decisions that they have to apply. I think, and you know very well that Norway is a very rich country. So they want to be in because being in the single market is a fantastic boost for the economy of the different countries. So coming back to defense, my point is that defense will be part of my report. It will be part of my report for a very simple reason, because we have to scale and we have to have an upgrade of the coordination among the different countries. I want to give you another data that can be interesting, to give you an idea of why I think we have to be more united. We decided to help Ukraine as Europeans. We put a lot of money to buy military furnitures to help them. It was right choice, and we have to continue. We have to keep this decision. There's a small problem, but this problem is, in my view, very urgent, and we have to fix it. All this money, 80% of this money was spent to buy non-European military furnitures. It is totally crazy, because we have the capacity to build and to produce these furnitures, and producing these furnitures means jobs in our countries. And we know very well that we need jobs. But 80% of these military furnitures were South Korean, Michigan, with the money of the European taxpayers. We created jobs in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Seoul, and so on. So just to tell you that we need to coordinate ourselves, but I have to say, maybe it is really wishful thinking, but we have to do more. Two countries decided to put together something, their navy, Belgium and the Netherlands. They are starting, and I think it's a good choice. It is a good choice because we spend a lot of money in defense, but we duplicate what we do. We do exactly the same. Take the Mediterranean. We are, how many navies are in the Mediterranean? Doing exactly the same. So if we are able to coordinate, we are able to spend better. And with the world of today full of threats, I think it is fundamental to be able to protect ourselves. And I have to say that in case of Trump's victory in the US elections, we know very well, he told us very clearly, in this incredible way in which he said to Putin, please attack the countries, the European countries that are not spending 2% of their GDP in defense. So just to tell you that that means a step in defense is absolutely necessary for the very simple reason that until now we were happy because the American taxpayer paid for us. And when I say paid for us, I'm saying for the Italians, for the Germans, for the Spaniards, for the countries that decided after the war to say, okay, we prefer that the Americans will protect us. We give them part of our sovereignty, because in Italy or in Germany, we are full of presence of American troops. but it allows us to spend less on defense. And so we have to be accountable, responsible, and serious. And we have to take this decision at the European level. I think it is necessary to do so. It is very sad to say what I'm saying, but what is happening in the world and the forecast for the future are telling us that, I know that many of you are experts on economic or financial matters, but let me make some advertising for my subjects. The rise of the interest for geopolitics in the last 5 years, in the last 3 years, is an unprecedented trend. We never had a similar, and it will last. Because the world of tomorrow is a world where there are decisions or complicated issues that are related to politics, to geopolitics, and it is fundamental to be able to take these decisions and to be united in taking these decisions.
Thank you. Trying perhaps to look at a brighter future. In the book Anima e Cacciavite, you make the claim that the most important commitment that everyone should make is to not disappoint the youth and not betray them in not giving them a worse future than the previous generation. So handing back the future to the younger generations. Now, you've been an advocate, you've supported, applauded projects like Erasmus, which have allowed the youth to take action and also take part in integration. Yet now part of your task with the report is also to make sure that the fundamental freedom of movement is also a freedom to stay. And my question would be, how can Europe walk the tightrope between fostering innovation through the circulation of talents who may eventually come back, some of the talents who go study abroad, for instance, and also the cohesion policy needs for a level playing field?
Wow, it's a very sensitive point, and a very sensitive point for a very clear reason. We, in the 30 years of the single market story, we had the single market perceived, first of all, with the freedom to move. That was, the single market is well known also like the market of the 4 freedoms: freedom of movement of goods, capital, services, and persons. But the main problem is that maybe you read a book that is, in my view, very interesting to understand the Brexit trend, that was written by a British journalist, David Goodhart, creating these 2 categories, anywhere and somewhere, and saying that today's people are divided in 2 groups. One group of people very mobile, cosmopolitan. I think we are in this room, this group is majority. And we have another group of people, less mobile, less cosmopolitan, without a great, we say, push to go in another country, to speak another language, to work in another environment, people less mobile. You know very well the map of the vote Brexit. It's really shocking. If you go to the internet now, you can find the map, and the map is all the big cities against Brexit, all the countryside in favor of Brexit. So when people are gathering together in a cosmopolitan way, in a mobile way, exchanges, in that case, they were against Brexit. So what is the point? The point is the fact that we need to avoid that the European Union is considered only as good opportunities for the mobile people, for us, if I may say. And this is why I launched this provocation. This provocation will be in the report, but I decided to launch it in this period of preparation of the report to test it. And I'm having some discussions in universities. I was 2 days ago in Warsaw at Collège d'Europe in Natolin. And it was a fantastic discussion with your colleagues there. I had the same discussion in other universities in Paris, in Milan, in Ancona, and other universities. I tried to discuss on this topic, freedom to move, but I think we need a single market able to give also the freedom to stay. And what does it mean, freedom to stay? Freedom to stay, in my view, means many things. One most important point is related to the fact that we have to, I would say, to look at what is happening today. The freedom to move has also a dark side of the mobility. And I am a great fan of mobility. I like to move, and I like a European Union giving the possibility to move. But when you have, as consequence of the accession of some countries to the European Union, the brain drain that in some countries is becoming spoliation. Give you figures. Croatia. In 10 years, Croatia lost 10% of its population. 10% in 10 years. If you take Romania, if you take Bulgaria, these countries are losing millions of people, of their population. And they are not in a, I would say, they're not substituted with other people arriving there. Because mobility is good if it is not just one-way ticket. Today, in Europe, mobility is one-way ticket. And it is one-way ticket without any possibility to change the trend, with very complicated consequences. I think Brexit is one of them, if I may say very clearly, because we know very well that the vote for Brexit was partially of the British people to say we don't want so many non-British people in our. But I can tell you that I don't know if someone here studied in the Netherlands or is familiar with what is happening in the Netherlands. They had elections in November, in autumn. And part of the debate of this electoral campaign in the Netherlands was the fact that, as you know, the Netherlands tried to took the position that had the UK before, so attracting students. For my generation, it would have been totally inconceivable to have the choice to study in the Netherlands. Today, it is a fact, and it was, I think, a very bright, a very intelligent choice. But the fact that the Netherlands are attracting a lot of people is changing completely. For instance, the housing problem in the Netherlands, the prices, and so on and so forth. And part of the electoral campaign of the Populist Party winning the elections was to say we have to limit the presence of students from abroad, because these students are changing our, I would say, real estate market, and so on and so forth. So there's a problem there. There's a problem in the countries where people, and we know very well that our country, Italy, is experiencing the same problem with one-way ticket from some regions to other regions or to other part of Europe. So my point is that we need to change the cohesion policy, and we need to change some policies that can have also the possibility, for instance, to solve one of the main problems today, which is the services of general interest. Why a region, a village, a city is losing people? Many reasons, but the most important one is the fact that yesterday, maybe, this village, this region had his hospital, had his number of services, infrastructures, and so on and so forth. And today we know very well that there's a reduction for financial reasons and for many other aspects. I think we have to, at European level, when I say freedom to stay, I don't want to limit the mobility, but I want to be able to have policies to avoid that some part of our European Union is become a sort of ghost regions or without any attractiveness. And I think it's fundamental to be successful in that, but also for a very simple reason. This ticket, this one-way ticket, is for young people, and usually for the best people, the most skilled people. So at the end of the day, to leave many parts of our European Union without the most skilled, with most young, and with the most international and open part of their potential leadership class. And I think it is a crucial aspect. So this is why I strongly believe that this problem of the freedom to stay has to be tackled in a new way, with new ideas, but we have to consider it. Otherwise, this separation in two groups of people in our societies, the mobile people and the not mobile people, will become as it is in the US. In the US, it is exactly like that. There was an incredible study in the US on the vote on the people with passport and the people without passport. That is interesting because in Europe, we all have passport. In the US, there's a large part of the people without passport because they don't feel that they need to leave their country. And without passport, the people without passport, they vote in one way, usually. And the people with passport, they vote in large majority in another way. I think it's interesting to understand this point. And if you overlap these figures with the figures of the vote for Brexit and with this discussion about freedom to move, freedom to stay, what I want to say in a few terms is that we need a European Union that is for all. And we have to be absolutely aware that the people like us who are mobile, who like Erasmus, we have to know that we need to extend and to invent something that can be useful for all and not continuing with this separation that is, I think, mortal at the end of the day for our society.
I think that at the start of the panel, you said something about the European Union. You said, to be influential, we need to be together. And this kind of reminded me of why United Italian Societies is there. Because to be influential, we need to be together. And that's why we work every day towards the goal of United Italian Societies. And so starting from that point, I want to ask you something about universities, given that we are in a university, given that you've been Dean of the Paris School of International Affairs at Sciences Po in Paris for 6 or 7 years. I want to ask you, in your kind of, if you had to picture an ideal EU in 50, 60, 70 years, what do you see where do you see higher education institutions, either universities or also those institutions that offer vocational qualifications that are often forgotten and are often not talked about? Do you see a common European market, a common EU market also for those? And if yes, kind of practically, do you think that there's a chance of doing that? Or do you think that it's too hard to put in practice?
I think I will spoiler another point of the report. That is, but
It stays here.
We take it confidential.
Shadow Miles rules.
When Delors launched the single market, it was on the 4 freedoms. I mentioned the 4 freedoms: services, capitals, people, and goods. If you think a moment to these 4 categories, these 4 categories, they smell very much 20th century. There's something missing. People, services, capitals, and goods. there's something missing. And I think, and it is not my idea, but Jacques Delors himself launched it at the end of the period of his mandate. He said, we need to invent a fifth freedom. And the fifth freedom has to do with knowledge, research, data, what is intangible, if I may say, because the four freedoms are very tangible. Is the word, is the analogic word. So I think I will try to address this topic of the fifth freedom. And answering your question, I think, for instance, the main problem is how to have the possibility to circulate in a European space that is today very open. It wasn't for my generation. My generation, in my class in my city in Pisa, nobody left to go studying abroad. Nobody. And today, figures are totally different on that. But my point is, we need to, I know it's difficult, I know, I want to prevent. I know it's difficult, but we have the problems that I mentioned for telecom, that I mentioned for many other subjects are existing also for research and university. We have a problem of dimension. And this problem of dimension is how we say, is a mortal, is an existential challenge. We need to, how we say, to integrate. We need to merge. I know it's difficult. The idea to have a merger of universities is very difficult. There are centuries of history for some of them. I know, brands. But if we are not able to have a critical mass, first of all, for the research activities, and the big difference, I have to say that for me, in my 7 years at Sciences Po, I was really shocked by the fact that we in Europe, we think, for instance, that I am a student, I was a student, then I had my life, and I think that it is for granted that my university continues to have his success or his work. In the US, there's this approach that I give back to my university. And if I become a billionaire, I give back billions to my university. Even in fields like, for instance, international relationship, where it is not usual to have big endowment or big grants. But for instance, there's no comparison. Chicago University, Johns Hopkins, just two concrete examples. They got an endowment of 100 million euros for international relations. 100 million euros. And I know how much it was difficult to find a donation of 500,000 euros in Europe for one big program, and then you ask for 500,000 euros, and it's, so we have to change mentality, because research means dimension, means the need to have a different dimension. So my answer to your question is that we have to find a way to merge, to integrate. We had a program. LSE is part of this program, I hope, still. But I think LSE is part of Civica. It was part, when I was in Sciences Po, we created Civica together. And Civica I would say, is an embryon of the European university system. That means that we create universities and a conglomerate of universities. And it is fundamental. It's a way also for a student to move from a university to another, for a professor to move from a university to another. But and for now, this project of the European universities is too small. With too small financing from the European Union. We need to have a different approach. So I think dimension there matters. And we need, the next step will be to have European universities. Big universities, maybe with headquarters in different cities, but big universities with the mobility, with the possibility to be mobile as professors, as scholars, as academic community. And so having this dimension means that you can compete at world level. I think we will see what will be in the next 20 years, the competitiveness of Indian universities, of the Indian business school, of the Indian research centers. We didn't have in China this, because we don't see what they are doing. But their dimension on research is absolutely not comparable to our dimension. In the US, the dimension of the investment absolutely is not comparable with ours. So I think it is always the same point that I mentioned at the beginning. We have to integrate. If we are not able to integrate, we won't be able to be influential tomorrow in this world that is changing completely.
Thank you. For the last question before we open up to Q&A, I would like to ask you a bit more on something a bit more on the finance side. In terms of also being competitive, I guess, in the world, where do you see the main next steps for achieving international competitiveness through private investment in the single market, coming from the banking union, the capital markets union, digital currencies, or even the 28th regime of corporate law in terms of making Europe an attractive hub for investment?
I will limit myself to your final point, otherwise there's no time for questions and I want to exchange with you. 28th regime, what does it mean? It is an idea that I would like to put in the report. And the idea is the following one, which is the problem of the SMEs in Europe with the single market. SMEs are, you know very well, 90% of our economy, 90% everywhere in Europe. In Italy, more than maybe 90%. An SME has a big problem in relationship with the single market. Which is the problem? The problem is the fact that if you are an SME, you are a company with, I don't know, 30, 40, 80 people. If you have 50 people working with you, it is very complicated for you to dedicate 10, 50, 20 of these people to work on the legal fragmentation of the European Union and on the taxation fragmentation of the European Union. Which is the problem? We live in a European Union where we have 27 corporate laws. 27 corporate laws. Each country has its own corporate law. Each country has its own taxation system. If you are an SME, it's very complicated to organize a legal office of 15 people able to drive you in going in the different countries and working in the different corporate laws, in the different taxation systems. So the single market, if you are an SME, you perceive the single market as a threat, not as an opportunity. Because the only consequence you see in the single market is the fact that someone bigger than you can come from another country bringing competition in your territory, on your ground. And you are not big enough to go abroad. You know, only 8% of the total amount of SMEs work abroad in another country of the European Union. 8%. So the idea of the 28th regime is the following one. I know it's impossible to have a unique corporate law. We know very well, we have traditions, centuries of tradition, but we know that we can create a 28th corporate law for companies, for business, for SMEs, or we can create a 28th taxation system. And we can say to the different SMEs, you choose the 28th. And choosing the 28th, we create a system where the 28th regime is applied in all the 27 countries. So I think this point, I know it's complicated. I don't want to make it simple. It is not simple, it's difficult. But I feel that we have to work in that direction. And my feeling is, if it is working, I'm sure that the large number of companies will choose this 27 with this 28th regime. And I want to be very clear. If we are not able to do that, if we are not able to change in that direction, companies, because the business is free by definition, will choose their 28th regime. And their 28th regime will be the UK regime or the American regime. Because they will try to be, and I think this is the key issue. So I want to tell you that even on this topic, the problem of the integration, the problem of overcoming the obstacles that we are having among the 27 is absolutely fundamental. And we have to do it in an effective way on the financial side and on many other topics. On the financial side, the emergency is becoming more than an emergency. There's no time at all. The American market is becoming bigger and bigger. Is becoming attractive, more attractive than the European market. The European market is declining because of the fragmentation, because of the dimension. If you take now the list of the 10 top investment banking in the world, they are all American. If you take the asset management, they are all American. It was not like that 30 years ago. It was not like that. So the dimension at national level in Europe, it's not enough. We have to merge. We have to stay together. If you are able to stay together, we are competitive with the American market. I end up on this point with this very simple example. Why I say that? Because you can tell me, you can react by saying that, but you want giants. You want to be gigantic. You want to, why? I give you a very simple example. You are experts on finance, on economy, and you know very well that money goes where it is profitable. And the American financial market today is bigger than ours, and it is profitable because it is big, and it is bigger and is more effective. Where is the point? The point is that it is so attractive that it is attracting our money. And we are sending daily our European savings to the US. And our European savings, because of the fragmentation of our financial market, they are going there feeding the American economy. They are going there and they are used to feed, through equity, first of all, the American economy. And why I say it's a problem? I say it's a problem because we need this money in Europe. For instance, they use this money in the US and they launched IRA. I don't know what someone mentioned IRA. IRA, you know very well what is IRA. It's a fantastic boost for the American economy. And it is good because it is allowing them to go green. And I think finally they decided to go green. I think we have to be happy because they decided to go green. But IRA is very interesting because when I started my journey around Europe, I met many entrepreneurs. I started in Helsinki. My first trip was to Helsinki. And all the Finnish entrepreneurs, they told me, you have to go to the US. You have to copy the IRA system. The IRA system is the best one. We have to replicate it in Europe. And I decided to visit the US in my trip. And so I spent some days in Washington, D.C., and was at Georgetown University, and I used this time to meet people. And I met the main architect of IRA. There's a man named John Podesta, who is now the envoy for climate of the Biden administration. And you know very well what is the big asset of IRA. It is the fact that it is based on tax credits. Tax credits means it is fast, automatic, with less bureaucracy. There's a small detail. They can and we can't at the European level. They can because they have taxation as federal competence. We can't because member states said to Jacques Delors and in general at the European Union, taxation is ours, is not yours. No Brussels on taxation. And the consequence is that we are not able to build up a tax credit system for investments. And all the investments and the incentives are very bureaucratic because we are not able to use the system of tax credit. And so is the other demonstration of what we need. We need to move in the direction of more integration on all these fields. If we are not able to do so, we will continue to be bureaucratic. Sorry if I add another example, but I want to give you as much as when I was in the US, I had many, how we say, fight with American people, American experts telling me, you, the Europeans, we innovate, you regulate. And they told me, take artificial intelligence. There's this idea of the artificial intelligence. We are developing the artificial intelligence, and you immediately, puff, you regulate the artificial intelligence. Why the European Union took immediately this decision of the artificial intelligence? And in reality, the main reason for the European Commission to launch a regulation and then to have the final approval of this regulation was not only an idea to say we need to have regulation on that, but it was also to avoid and to stop the 27 regulations, because all the different countries were in the same time studying a national regulation on artificial intelligence. Can you imagine 27 laws, different laws on artificial intelligence? And on these topics on tech, we need competence. These topics are complicated, and it's so complicated to find competences at national level in all the member states. So the need to have this discussion at the European level was also the need to have the best discussion possible and to avoid this fragmentation. 27. I say that because I think we have to be aware of the very fundamental challenge for the future of the European Union. We have to find the good balance between national sovereignty that is needed because we know very well that each country has his own language, his own history, and so on and so forth. But then we have to be integrated at the European level. And we need to delegate power because we share this power together, and then we are stronger if you are able to do so. This is, in my view, the most important challenge of the future. Otherwise, we live in a world of simulacrum of power, with the idea that at national level, I have all the symbol of power. But having at national level all these symbols is better to have them or part of them shared altogether, because sharing these symbols and these tools means that we are more influential and more effective.
Thank you.
I think Thank you very much for your speech and for your words. And I think it's now time to open up for questions. I would ask you to grab maybe a couple of questions at a time and to try 2 or 3 questions at a time, and then we'll try and merge them together to try and give the possibility to as many students as possible.
I think for gender balance, we have to start by.
Yes. There.
Thank you. I'm Mirgana, I'm a King student. And I wanted to ask you, you talked a lot about integration and the necessity of integration in order to have a bigger dimension. But as far as the polls tell us, the European Parliament will move towards the right. So how does this balance with the need for more integration? How will we be able to integrate further if the Parliament moves towards the right? Thank you.
You know, I don't think that integration means left and disintegration means right. I think the European Union was created and the integration of the European Union was based on a great agreement between different political families. And these political families, I hope they will cooperate now and in the future. It is, in my view, more integration and more effectiveness, more concrete effectiveness is not left and right. It's common sense, is the way to protect our citizens in the future in an intelligent way. What I want to tell you is that today we have to break one thought. And this thought is the following one. This thought is the attitude of all the political leaders that use the following sequence. I am political leader. I have to protect citizens, my citizens, the citizens of my constituency, or my country, my region, my city. And to protect them, the best dimension is the national dimension. So while I'm a problem, or I raise a wall, or I raise borders, because raising borders, I know how to deal with the problem within my community, because I have to protect my community. This discourse is not so, it's evident, it's very used, it's spread around Europe, everywhere. But I remember one call for action of the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Xavier Bettel, at that time Prime Minister, now is Minister of Foreign Affairs, crying during COVID and saying to the European member states, you are closing borders, you are killing my people. Because for a part of Europe, like Luxembourg, which is at the very center of everything, with borders with France, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, closing borders for his country was the way to kill people, because closing borders was the way to avoid nurses, for instance, leaving on one part of the border to go in the other part of the borders and to be in the hospitals. So it is the reason why borders are in our goals, are in our instinct, because we think that borders are something that is helping us to defend ourselves. I don't blame this idea, because it is the legacy of, I would say, centuries and centuries. But it is not true. It is not true. It is not by borders that we are able today to solve the problems of the new technologies, of what is happening with the new threats. Is sharing solutions and not just using the borders. So I want to be on that very, and I hope that this discourse is not just left. I think this is a left and right. And when I have to say, when I mentioned single market was a joint creation of Jacques Delors and Margaret Thatcher. And Margaret Thatcher was right, and Jacques Delors was left. But they created it in common. And it is the greatest success. And I'm very sad because the UK and the British people, they are not taking advantage of that. I can tell you that for me, it's really sadness because they wasted a great opportunity.
Other questions? I think here we have two first row. Maybe we take them together.
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm Francesca. I do history at the LSE. And I was wondering, you spoke about the EU's regulation of AI and the AI Act. It has been said that kind of this effort to regulate AI was done because of the EU's inability to keep up with the innovation of AI and the AI race between America and China. Do you think that there's any way that the EU can kind of sort of improve on this aspect and kind of keep up with the development of these new technologies? Thank you.
Maybe we take that one. Sure.
Hi, my name is Francesca. I wanted to casualty.
It's a very
I wanted to ask, in terms of United Kingdom and Europe, do you think in the future there could be an intermediate institution between them, like EU and non-EU?
On the first question, I think once again, dimension matters. We need to have dimension for our investments. The big difference is that in the US, you know, to get a result on artificial intelligence, you need to put a lot of money and to have many failures. Then you got one result, but this result, you have this result after dozen and dozen of failures. So you need to put money and to waste money too. But then you have the result. This is what we are not able to do in Europe because of the lack of money. When I mentioned the financial problem, and I want to be very frank with you, what I'm saying, it can seem something very simple, easy, but it is not. Because in the public opinion, the crucial importance of the financial system is absolutely not something that is shared at a larger level. There's the idea that finance is something bad and we have to limit finance. And there's not the idea that finance is decisive for real economy. And without a good financing, the real economy doesn't work. So my point is that we need to change mentality. We need to consider that failures are not a stigma. I think there's a problem here in when I say our continental European approach. You can fail in life. I don't see any success story without failures before. And in Europe, in continental Europe, we have this mentality where failure is a sort of stigma. But also in the rules, you know, better than I do, that in the rules, failure is a sort of stigma, and it's very complicated too. Even in the number of years in which we have to solve a procedure for after a failure, it's so long that it's very complicated to restart. I think we have to consider that other mentality, like the American one, are maybe on this topic, they are better than ours. So I think we have to consider it. On defense, sorry, I gave the answer. On UK, Europe, I think defense is the true topic. We have to find a way to reorganize ourselves cooperating on defense. I think we can start a new dialogue, UK, European Union, on defense. Because on defense, it's so evident that we have to be together. It's so evident that it's totally, I would say, it's a suicide not working together. And I think it is possible to do so. I think it can be a good way to restart the dialogue. And I think this is what I was maybe write in the report, because the single market was a creation of the UK. So we have to restart with them, respecting their decision, but knowing that we have to relaunch the cooperation in some of the fields where it can be really very useful.
I think unless you need to rush, there's time for any questions.
Okay. No, but I have time. We can stay.
Allora, possiamo stare tantissimo.
Thanks, Enrico, for the talk. I want to follow up on the forthcoming European elections and three very related question quite quick. First of all, let's not talk about left and right. Let's talk about Europhile and anti-European sentiment, right? Do you expect the composition of the European Parliament to change? Do you expect that change to be skewed towards anti-European parties? If so, do you expect that to actually change the fate of the European Union and our priorities? Or do you expect sort of like discontinuity in policy, especially in foreign policy, to be there because of institutional constraints? And if this is the case, what does this tell us about the democratic deficit that the European Union is experiencing? And should we do anything to address that?
Wow.
Thank you very much for coming. I wanted to bounce back on your mention on telecom networks at the beginning of the talk, especially in light of KKR, private equity firm, recent bid for Telecom Italia infrastructure network. And well, in 2014, you pledged the government abstention in such matters in a similar matter with shareholder Telefonica. And I wanted to ask, in light of European integration and the path of Europe going forward, what is the role of a private markets investor, and did you change your point of view from 2014? Thanks.
Forecasts today are saying that the European Parliament will change, but it will change. We have to consider the European Parliament is not like a national parliament. It's a parliament that has a totally different role, because it is the combination of 27 countries. So the changes are important changes, but you won't see there completely reversed majority. The European political life needs always cooperation among the big families, the big European families. And you know very well, the European construction was a cooperation between Christian Democrats and Social Democrats. That was the main composition. Then other families started to be part of that, liberals, Greens, but it was a cooperation. And my guess is that it's impossible today to consider that the European Union is ready to have an American system with one president or one candidate president against another one, we vote, and so on and so forth. I think we have to consider that the European political landscape and the way in which we decide is different from the US, from China, from India, from the other countries. We have a collective leadership. That means that for our system, because of the composition and the code sharing, if I may say, between the national level and European one, all the important decisions of the European Union are taken in a collective way by a collective leadership. And you can check it, giving a look to what happened in the last four years, COVID period, for instance. We needed to take decisions, and we did it in a collective way. When I say collective decision, I say the 27 leaders of the European Council, the President of the Commission and the members of the Commission, the leaders of the European Parliament, they play a fundamental role there. So this is today the way in which European politics works. Maybe tomorrow it will have an evolution. And I'm in favor of an evolution. But I think we have to respect the way in which today it works. And frankly speaking, I don't think that there will be a complete change in political life after these elections. For a very simple reason, because at the European level, it is a matter of cooperation among people. It's not just I win, so I impose my idea to all the others. It is cooperation. And in 27, the only way is to cooperate. I think you are aware of that. The European life and the participation at the European life is a fantastic exercise in terms of learning respect. For instance, in Sciences Po, I had a course on European integration, and I wanted to have some simulations in my course. And the first simulation I had always was a simulation in which 27 of my students were simulating a European Council meeting. And I wanted to have this simulation because I told them, I don't know what you will do in your life, but if you will work in European affairs, you have to learn the most important lesson to be able to be effective in European affairs. To be brief in your speeches. Because each European meeting has 27 prises de parole. If you start saying something that is not interesting, you will end up immediately and you will lose immediately. You have to be straight to the point and able with the others to take decisions together, to find coalition, to create coalitions, because we are 27. And the voice of Malta has the same time of the voice of Germany. This is Europe. I know it seems a little bit strange, but this is Europe. So it's very important to understand that the way in which we live together is a question of respect. We are there in Europe and we need to respect each other. It's fantastic in my view. In a world in which we have always the idea that I have to prevail to the others. My idea, I won, so you lose, and I am majority, you are minority, you shut up. The world of today is a world in which is the collective intelligence that can win. And we have to trust the collective intelligence. But the collective intelligence means the need altogether to try. You know, democracy has to have an evolution, in my view, because the digital world is changing everything. Democracy as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago is no more the democracy that can be today for a very simple reason. The idea that I vote, you are a candidate, I trust you, I vote for you. And for 5 years, you represent me and other million of people. And after 5 years, I will come again and say, okay, you were right, I will vote for you again. I can give you an example that shocked me related to Brexit. We had many British students in Sciences Po on Brexit. No, sorry, on Brexit, in the period of Brexit. And you can imagine that these students, they were not very big fan of Brexit. A UK student living in Paris is someone who is against Brexit. And after Brexit, we had many conversations and many discussions. I remember a student crying because of the result of Brexit, a British student in Paris crying, but not crying only because of the result, crying because he confessed that he didn't vote. And he didn't vote because he said it was too complicated to come back to vote at home. So I didn't understand that the vote was so important, because you remember the vote was a consultative vote. That is incredible. The vote was presented as a consultative vote. So, and he told me after a long discussion, but you know, and I was very active on social media. A lot of very, very good posts, many likes in my post. So I was very active and I was very good and effective. And I told him, yes, but you didn't vote. And all your posts and all your likes were zero in comparison with your vote, and you didn't vote. And I say that because the idea, that reflection brought me a lot of food for thought. Because at the end of the day, I think we have all the same approach. And the same approach is that with my activity on social media, I can be really very active. I can bring a lot of supporters. I can have millions of likes. So it's good. But at the end of the day, the vote is something that lasts for a long period. Is a sort of la sacralità del voto. And the fact that on the vote, in the vote moment, we are at the same level. I am at the same level of the president of my country. 1 and 1. No matter how many likes I have on my post, but the decision is taken not on the basis of the post, but on the basis of the result of the vote. But at the same time, it would be totally, I would say, blind and stupid to think that we can continue saying that the citizen can participate only in the moment of the vote. So I am a great fan of participative democracy. Participative democracy tools are the future. We have to invent, we have to be creative. The conference on the future of Europe was a very interesting experiment. And we have to discuss on the way in which citizens can participate in between, and not only voting in the moment of the elections. And through the digital tools, I think it is possible, and we have to go in that direction. On the telecom side, what I think today is that we need more mergers, cross-border mergers. So you mentioned Telefonica, TIM, and so on. I think we need more mergers. And the main problem is that we are not ready at the European level to accept that each country loses his own, we say, incumbent, national incumbent. Because there's the idea of the national flag, and the idea that the national flag has to be there in the telecom company, and in reality, we need to have efficient and effective companies, not the national flag, because the national flag doesn't mean effectiveness, doesn't mean modernity, and we can have rules. You have to respect rules, to respect, for instance, languages, national traditions, on everything. But it's not a problem to have the national flag on the operator. And this is why I think the point is that we need to have private investments, but we need to have mergers. And my point is that we need to have mergers, cross-border mergers, even between former incumbents. Because if we are not able to do so, all our telecom operators will suffer a lot, because they will, you know, when the single market was launched, the national dimension was a boost. Today, the national dimension is a ceiling, and we have to consider it when we think the way in which we can be more competitive.
Any other questions? There's one there from the right. We can take that one and then come back here, I would say.
So thank you very much. I will be really brief. You talked about dimension, and I think we all agree that the next steps for the EU is going to be an enlargement. whatever like every form is gonna take. But and I'm not just thinking about Ukraine, but I think that a few countries will need to get in. So my question is, do you think that there are threats for this enlargement, in the sense that now it's really easy to say that we all want Ukraine in and we all want new countries in, but then every country's interest that is in the single market may be affected by these new comings. So my question is, are there threats as well there? And do you see in the long term the possibility for an enlargement, or is it really far in the political perspective?
Back here, I'd say.
Thank you very much for your talk. You mentioned the need of an increased expenditure in defense, and with Germany reaching its 2% target after many years, however, through its special fund and still a very big gap in personnel. Do you think that Pistorius' proposal of reintroducing conscription in Germany in the Bundeswehr poses a threat or major benefits for the EU?
So two geopolitical questions, I have to say. I start by the enlargement. The enlargement is one of the most important tools in the hands of the European Union. Take what we did with the previous enlargement. The previous enlargement was a fantastic success, but it was problematic, really problematic, but it was a great success. I'm sure that you visited many of these countries. These countries are in a fantastic period of growth. Millions of people are experiencing freedom, are experiencing innovation, are experiencing. I was in Poland yesterday, and it's fantastic what Poland is doing. Take Estonia. Estonia today is becoming a model for the European Union. A model, for instance, for his bureaucracy is a bureaucracy without papers, all digital. And Estonia was Soviet Union. Poland had his own independence, but Estonia was Soviet Union. So I think it's fantastic what is happening. The next enlargement will be more complicated for political reasons, because in the Western Balkans, there are political problems, but also because Ukraine is not an easy, the need to enlarge to Ukraine, I think it's really a must, is an historic duty, and we have to do it. But we have to do it in a correct way. We have to do, and we have to, I would say, finalize the enlargement, knowing that to be part of the European Union, you have to behave. And you easily understand where I want to go. Because the enlargement means that you enter the European Union and you have this idea of being all with the same rights, the same responsibilities. And for a big mistake that we made 25 years ago, we didn't change the fundamental rule in our treaties before having the last enlargement. And this fundamental rule was the veto right to be eliminated. We didn't, and it was a big mistake, because we gave the veto right to people like Orban, for instance. And Orban is legitimate, totally legitimate. He's voted by his people. But when he uses the veto right, he creates for our entire European Union a threat, problem, and we pay for this problem and this threat. So, of course, I mentioned Orban just to be shorter, but veto rights are veto rights. Many countries are using the veto right. The veto right is il cancro dell'Unione Europea. For a very simple reason. The veto right is not used to stop an existential threat for your country. The veto right is used to blackmail. That's it. There's a study of a Flemish professor, a Dutch professor, studying all the cases in which the veto right was used by one country in foreign policy. Usually it is in foreign policy. And it is always used to blackmail. What does it mean? It means that I use the veto right not because I think on this topic there's an existential threat, so it's absolutely fundamental to stop this decision. But I have the power to stop this decision that is important for all of you because I want you to give me something that matters to me. And this is the way in which usually the veto right is used. There are so many examples. And we have to eliminate the veto right. I tell you something that is controversial, because even among the pro-European people, like I am, there's a discussion on that. Because someone is saying that, but it's not the main problem, because at the end of the day, with effort, energies, discussions, we are always able to overcome a veto right. So it's just a question of time. But my reaction to that is that the problem is not the fact that we overcome the veto right and then we get the result. The problem is the behavior that having the veto right for you is allowed. And this is the main problem, because if you know that you have the veto right, you take an attitude, you have behaviors that are the behaviors of someone who is not there to negotiate and to find a compromise. If you don't have the veto right as final tool, you are obliged to negotiate. And then we find agreements. This is the way in which we stay in 27. Can you imagine the US? Before taking an important decision in foreign policy, meeting among the 50 governors of Michigan, Alabama, North Dakota, Tennessee, and the governor of Arkansas saying that I am against. And so everything is stopped because the governor of Arkansas. I'm not joking. I can tell you that in 2020, you remember the Belarus case. And the Belarus case was the European Union wanted to put sanctions to Belarus. And so they discussed for months and months. Why for months and months? Because one country, Cyprus, nothing to do with Belarus. Can you imagine the relationship between Cyprus and Belarus? I think zero relationships. Because Cyprus, to get a result for Cyprus in his problem with Turkey, Cyprus knew that the dossier of Belarus was very sensitive for the others. And Cyprus said, okay, I veto this decision. And for months and months, we didn't take this decision. You can tell me, and you can say, who matters? It's not an important topic. I think in the, how we say, sick mind of Putin, Belarus played a role. Because Putin had the idea, Europeans, they are not serious. They are not even able to take a decision on Belarus because Cyprus stops Germany, France, and so on. So I think maybe I'm too far. I go too far. But maybe Putin had the idea, I can do whatever I want in Ukraine because they won't react. And they won't react because they are divided. I say that because on these topics, we have to be very, very clear. The responsibility of being able to take decisions all together is something that makes the difference between life and death many times. Politics and foreign policy is something that makes the difference between life and death. And we have to, on that, we have to be clear and we have to be good in being able to take these decisions. I forgot the second question. Yeah, defense and Germany. Yes. Yeah. I'm starting being tired. The main problem on defense is not having this 2% as a sort of mythologic threshold. No, the problem of defense is to be able to work together. Is to be able to work together, and is the necessity to be able to work together and to get the results together. So I think for Germany, it is a great achievement to raise their defense expenditures, but for Germany, it is very important to work with the others and to be able to have a defense industry that is integrated with the other defense industries. This is what I think we need to do in Italy, in France, in Sweden. Not only, not all the European countries are countries with a strong defense industry, just a few in Europe. But what is necessary is to have among these countries the capability to work together. I think for Germany, the decision was taken. I don't think that the decision to have a national and only a national program of expenditures is the right one. I think they need to do it together. Why don't we do it with the others in a combined decision with the possibility to work together and to apply this decision together? So I think it will be very complicated. Otherwise, you know, state aid is a problem because state aid is a problem of fragmentation of the system on this topic, but also on other topics. Take a decision on incentives of energy. I was in the Netherlands, I was in Belgium, and Netherlands and Belgium, for many reasons, they didn't give incentive on energy as the level of the one that France and Germany decided to. And you have so many people working around the border of the two, and giving on one side of the border the incentive and not on the other side, I think is the worst way to create a European integration. The level playing field works if we are able to apply the level playing field.
I think we'll call it a day and let you all guys and
Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you very much, President Letta, for having entertained us. And really, it was a really interesting panel. I'm just here to remind you that tomorrow is another day of the 2024 Italian Symposium. We will have, we'll start with Fabio Balboni, Lorenzo Codogno, and Brunello Rosa. We will proceed with Matteo Renzi. Then we will have Corrado Passera and Mirja Cartia Lazaro, scusate. E poi avremo, and then we will have the Italian Embassy event that we conclude the third day.
Can I tell you one point about what you are doing this year? This year is the best year in what you are doing. Why it is the best year? Because you decided because you decided l'unità fa la forza. You are all together. You are all together, and at the end of the day, the result is better. I think is the best example of what we have to do at the European level. It is exactly what you did today and in these very days. Of course, I know that working together is complicated because you have to convince your friend and the other friends and discussing and negotiating. Yes. But putting energies on that means having a better result. So congratulations for.
Thank you very much.
Grazie davvero.
Lo so.
Vediamo. Bravo. Paolo, quanto rimane? No, quanto rimane? Andava a cena. Non avevi un giorno in più? Assoluto. Capisco qualcosa d'altro. Fate la vela. Si riattacca, tranquillo. Hai costo solo $5.000. Grazie, grazie Gio, grazie, grazie. Grazie.
Io devo la roba.
Bene, grazie, grazie di nuovo. Grazie della
Nel guidarla nel...
Grazie di avere... Vabbè, no, va bene.
No, no, ma non è un problema, io cerco comunque di guidarla un attimo per fare anche le domande dopo, ma non c'è nessun problema. Volevo fare una domanda che sono curiosa. Lei ha menzionato che appunto ci sono comunque anche degli aspetti di ingegneria biomedica, io sono ingegneria biomedica e penso che sarebbe molto interessante comunque approfondire una domanda del genere. Lei sa se ci sono qualche opportunità o comunque come funziona più o meno per l'ingegneria biomedica all'interno dell'ESA e delle agenzie?
Beh, sì, uno dei problemi dell'ESA è che l'ESA non lavora, no, lavora ma da dei contratti fuori, per cui potrebbe, se uno fa ingegneria biomedica dovrebbe lavorare a personaggi
Che poi contatta.
lavoro all'ESA
Ah, ho capito.
è questo.
Magari me.
Bene, allora.